I had been drifting on the ocean with another woman for a whole day, just when we thought we would die out there. A ship suddenly appeared in the distance. We waved our arms and shouted for help, trying to get their attention, but the noise of the waves drowned everything in the end. It didn't work. We were completely hopeless, so we held on to each other tightly. Night fell. Then heavy rain poured down. We lifted our heads and drank as much as we could. The exhaustion from the day quickly pulled us into sleep. When I opened my eyes, the woman next to me was gone. I looked around. The sea was empty, with no choice left. I started swimming forward. Then, I heard movement in the water. A shark appeared not far away. It came straight at me. Somehow, I escaped its first attack. I was overjoyed. But then I saw blood dripping from my arm. At any moment, that blood could bring the shark back. I spotted a reef in the distance, and decided to risk it all. I pulled off my life jacket, smeared blood on it, and tossed it in the other direction. Then I swam hard toward the reef. The life jacket bought me some time, but the shark was still fast. At the last moment, I climbed onto the reef. That's when I realized my leg was also hurt. I tore my jacket to wrap it up, then collapsed into sleep. When I woke again, the tide had risen. The reef was almost gone, just when I thought the sea would take me. A ship was speeding straight toward me.
Annie, please!
This best-selling novelist was imprisoned in his own home by a murderer. Because Paul was secretly planning to escape, Annie found out. And because of that, Annie decided to punish him. Paul tried to lie his way out, but Annie didn't believe a single word he said. With no other choice, Paul reached for the knife he had hidden earlier, but he couldn't find it. That's when Annie pulled out exactly what he was looking for. Then she calmly explained how she had seen through his escape plans step by step. After that, Annie placed a piece of wood between Paul's legs, picked up a hammer she had already prepared, and ignored Paul's desperate begging. She swung it down without hesitation. Paul's perfectly healthy left leg was crushed and permanently disabled. To make sure he could never escape again, Annie raised the hammer once more and smashed his right leg as well. Paul let out a heart-wrenching scream. Meanwhile, the sheriff investigating Paul's disappearance was out relaxing one day when he noticed Annie coming into town again to buy supplies. She was even shouting insults at random passers-by. The sheriff knew Annie lived alone. There was no way she would need to shop so many times in 1 week. So after Annie left, he immediately went into the store to question the owner. The owner said that most of the things Annie had bought recently were typing machines and large amounts of paper, things a writer would need. The sheriff returned to the station and pulled up Annie's old records. That's when he saw reports from the hospital she once worked at. She had personally murdered dozens of infants and was eventually arrested and sent to prison. After her release, she disappeared into a remote town. Looking closely at one of the photos in the report, the sharp-eyed sheriff noticed a line of text, a sentence that had appeared in Paul's novel, spoken by the main character, Misery, word for word. That's when it hit him. Annie wasn't just anyone. She was Paul's biggest fan. Now deeply suspicious, the sheriff immediately drove to Annie's house. Seeing the police car heading toward her home, Annie quickly injected Paul with a sedative. At first, Paul tried desperately to resist, but the drug soon kicked in and he lost consciousness. Annie dragged him into the basement and hid him there. Then she calmly opened the door to greet the sheriff, acting as if nothing had happened at all. She told him she'd been practicing writing in Paul's style, which was why she bought a typewriter and so much paper. The sheriff carefully inspected the house, but found nothing unusual. He started to think maybe his theory was wrong, but just as he stepped outside, he heard a noise coming from the basement. Paul had woken up. He accidentally knocked over a grill nearby, drawing the sheriff's attention. The sheriff rushed back and opened the basement door, and there he was, Paul, imprisoned right in front of him. Everything the sheriff suspected was true, but just as he was about to rescue Paul, Paul saw something that completely shocked him.
This is a planet where learning is despised. The girl not only studied in secret, but also achieved significant results. Some people on the planet are plotting to execute her. Her mother had no choice but to accept an invitation from a distant empire. 2 guards were standing at the border, because once you leave the planet, you are also erased from its records. An imperial ship traveled 100,000 light years to come, specifically to welcome this unremarkable girl. She begged her parents to go with her, but neither her mother nor father had ever been educated. They couldn't survive on other planets. Reluctantly, she had to say goodbye to her family. The 2 guards stepped aside for her. It symbolized that she would never set foot on the planet again in her life. Her mother prayed for her once more. As the ship departed, she disappeared forever from her family's sight. The ship headed toward a space station to switch to a more advanced warp ship. Having never encountered technology on her home planet, she seemed a bit lost. Even though she had read about how to use it in books, there were always some differences from reality. The emissary who welcomed her gave her an on-the-spot lesson. This was how Gaul learned to use the identity verification system. The 2 entered the cryopods. The staff attached the device to her body. Although she had never seen it in real life, Gaul was already familiar with its principles and mathematical formulas. Web-like structures wrapped around her. Without proper training, the body and brain would become uncoordinated in the wormhole. There were many other travelers at the station. As the ship's warp drive activated, a powerful energy gradually formed a wormhole. During the warp flight, Gull's cryopod seemed to malfunction. She unexpectedly woke up during the journey. She witnessed the wondrous moments inside the wormhole. When the staff saw her awake, they rushed to remedy the situation. As the ship exited the wormhole, the warp drive gradually stopped. Gull marveled at the sight of Trantor's space elevator. This cylindrical elevator stretched from space down to 100 floors below Trantor's surface. The ship successfully docked. Since Trantor was the imperial capital, the place was particularly bustling. Entering the city required strict security checks. Since Gull's sponsor was Dr. Selden of Streeling University, she easily obtained a pass. She entered the passenger compartment. She sat down as instructed. The compartment began its rapid descent. Due to the vast distance from the surface, even at such speeds, it would still take 14 hours to reach the ground. Strictly speaking, it wasn't even the true surface, because billions of residents lived 100 floors underground. They worked their entire lives on the 100th floor underground, yet they never had the chance to see the surface above. The surface layer was home to the Emperor's palace. They were dawn, day, and dusk. All three were the same person, just different aged clones. Whenever one of them died, the next clone of the Emperor would take their place. It was an eternal, unceasing cycle. There would never be another transition of the throne. The 14 hours passed quickly. Gull finally descended to the 64th floor of the Trantor station. The emissary who had welcomed her had completed his mission. He no longer had anything to do with what came next. The two formally said goodbye. She took out her ID badge and began searching the crowd for the student sent to meet her. Finally, they met. The student gave her a brief overview of the surroundings. It was then that Gull realized the sky was all a virtual image. Most people would spend their entire lives without ever leaving this level. A cockroach monster was relentlessly ramming its head against the spaceship's glass. Everyone inside instantly froze in terror, but the female vice captain told them not to worry, because the glass was specially reinforced. Yet just as she finished speaking, the cockroach monster smashed through the glass and burst inside. Sensing danger, Jack immediately stepped forward. He quickly injected an active serum into his body and transformed into a super strong bullet and warrior. With just a single punch, he instantly took down the cockroach monster with ease. Seeing this, everyone's confidence surged again, but in the very next second, something completely unexpected happened. Tens of thousands of cockroach creatures suddenly swarmed and surrounded the spaceship. And even worse, the spaceship's system malfunctioned at that exact moment. Escaping from the area was now impossible. Jack immediately suggested that everyone head for the Mars 1 ship launched 500 years ago. If they could board that ship, they might still have a chance to return to Earth. He chose to stay behind, to hold off the swarm and cover their retreat. So they split into two teams. Kevin transformed into Mosquito Man and teamed up with Jack to fight the invading cockroach monsters. The other group rode an armored vehicle toward Mars 1, but when they opened the steel gate, they discovered that the area outside was already packed with a massive cockroach army. In the critical moment, Tom decisively injected himself with active serum and instantly transformed into a fire-breathing green beetle. Using the power of his flames, the armored vehicle easily broke through the enemy's encirclement. It then sped toward the Mars 1 ship at a blazing speed of 300 miles per hour. But the very next second, a massive black tsunami suddenly surged across the Martian surface. As they looked closer, they realized it was a terrifying wave formed by countless cockroaches moving as one. By now, Tom had already reached his limit. At that moment, two girls bravely volunteered themselves. They quickly injected active serum into their bodies and transformed into two beautiful insect warriors with shields. Their ability, incredibly high defense and armor. Surprisingly, with the two girls joining the battle, the exhausted Tom was re-energized and unleashed another burst of flame faster than light. However, this new wave of insects was clearly larger and thicker. Even though the three of them fought with everything they had, the armored vehicle that had broken through lost its balance due to the intense shaking. Everyone inside was knocked unconscious. At that moment, the out-of-control vehicle suddenly activated autopilot and drove away, and the remaining three heroically perished surrounded by the cockroach army.
She only drank a stranger's drink at a party, yet when she woke up, she found she had slept in the river all night. Kelly hurriedly swam to the shore, but no matter how loudly she shouted, she received no response at all. Crows, drawn by the scent of death, kept circling above her head. Panicked, Kelly rushed out of the forest and ran back to town along a deserted path. Everything on the streets looked normal, yet there wasn't a single person in sight. Only a husky stood there, barking wildly at her. She ran home in a hurry, but her mother completely ignored her, still calling the police and searching for her. Kelly grabbed her mother's arm, but her mother couldn't feel her at all. She picked up a vase and smashed it hard onto the floor. But when she looked down, there was nothing there. Turning around, she saw the vase completely intact. She rushed to her sister's room for help. No matter how long she spoke, her sister didn't respond at all, as if Kelly had completely vanished from this world. Terrified, Kelly ran back to her room. Just as she was about to take off her clothes, she noticed deep red strangulation marks covering her neck and large patches of dried blood all over her body. Helpless, Kelly undressed. She tried to fix her hair, only to realize her scalp was already covered with wounds of varying depth. She froze in shock, tears streaming down her face. Enduring the pain, she cleaned the blood from her body. But after nothing more than a shower, Kelly was stunned to discover that all the wounds covering her body had miraculously healed. She became even more confused. At that moment, she noticed a photo of herself attending a motorcycle race with her boyfriend. Suddenly, she realized this had to be connected to her memory loss. She got dressed, mounted her motorcycle, and set out to investigate the truth. Unbeknownst to her, nothing would change because of what she did. Kelly rode to the site where the party had been held after the race. She knew this was the last place she remembered before losing her memory. But she discovered that her mother and stepfather had already mobilized the entire town to help search for her. Watching everyone busy searching, Kelly grew increasingly anxious. Even though she was standing right there, no one noticed her at all. A deep sense of despair washed over her. At that moment, a dog that could see everything noticed her. Kelly suddenly realized that the dog could sense her presence. An idea struck her. She quickly grabbed the dog's leash and slowly led it toward the place where she had woken up. Seeing the dog's strange behavior, people assumed it must have found something. They all followed it to the riverbank. Kelly walked straight into the water and shouted at the people, but their eyes remained empty, unable to see her. Just then, the crows flew in again, circling above a girl's body. The people seemed to realize something and rushed into the river. Before long, right beneath the circling crows, they actually found Kelly's corpse. Looking at her own pale face, the girl swore to uncover the truth behind her death. Seeing her mother and biological father overwhelmed with grief, she couldn't bear to stay. She turned and walked into the forest. She went to her biological father's side, wanting to see him one last time. Unexpectedly, her father seemed able to see her. Hearing his daughter calling out to him, he believed his grief had driven him to hallucinate, so he got into his car and sped away. Kelly, who had just experienced despair, now felt a spark of hope reignite. She quickly rode after him, but no matter how she explained, her father couldn't bring himself to accept it. This was simply something no one could understand. In desperation, Kelly made up her mind and suddenly came up with a bold plan. She accidentally knocked over a box of frozen meat without realizing that her boss had closed the freezer door behind her. The two sounds overlapped perfectly. The boss assumed no one was inside, while Millie focused on putting the meat back into the crate. It wasn't until the elevator gate slammed shut that she sensed something was wrong. She hurried to turn on the emergency light and shouted for help, but the boss had already locked the power switch and left on the elevator. Millie took off her backpack and rummaged through it frantically. Her heart sank. Her phone was still outside the door. She slammed herself against the freezer door, but it didn't budge at all. As the cold air continued to spread, Millie began shivering uncontrollably. She pulled a cart back a few steps and charged straight at the door. But the impact did nothing to help, and instead left her hands swollen and numb from the cold. Unwilling to give up, she blew warm air onto her palms, gripped the handle tightly, stood on her tiptoes, and rammed the door again. Time slowly slipped by. Frostbite began forming on her face, and her ears turned a deep purple. Her father anxiously kept calling, but no one answered. To keep her blood circulating, she rubbed her hands together non-stop. While moving, she felt something in her pocket, a movie ticket. Millie checked the time. There were less than 30 minutes left before the movie ended. The theater was right next to the restaurant. Once the movie let out, a crowd would surely pour out. Realizing this, she immediately grabbed a tray, crawled up to the freezer door, and stared intently at the ticking watch hands. When the movie ended, a large crowd did indeed spill out. Millie seized the moment and pounded on the door with all her strength. A boy noticed the strange noise and finally stopped walking, but at that exact moment, Millie had completely run out of strength and stopped knocking and calling for help. The father picked up his child and decisively left the mall. Just like that, Millie missed her only chance to escape. She curled up in a corner, half asleep from the cold. Her father was still waiting downstairs, but there was still no news. The lights throughout the mall were turned off. Millie was now the only person trapped inside. As the temperature continued to drop, her watch froze and stopped working. In an enclosed space like this, losing track of time was the most dangerous thing of all. As if that weren't enough, Millie started bleeding from the nose. In despair, she drifted into a heavy sleep. When she woke again, her fingers were stiff, and the temperature had fallen to minus 16 degrees Celsius. She dumped everything out of her backpack, even trying to make use of her thin underclothes. She tore the fabric into strips, pulled over a cart, grabbed some tape, and fashioned a crude insulated glove to keep her limbs from freezing solid. Staring at the ventilation fan blasting icy air, Millie dumped out the frozen meat, tore off a piece of cardboard, and reinforced it with tape. She climbed up a ladder and blocked one of the air vents. Using the same method, she prepared to block the second one. But just as she was about to succeed, the cardboard on the right was blown away. As she tried to secure it again, a powerful gust from the fan knocked her off balance. Millie dodged quickly, but it still slammed into her right foot. A surge of searing pain ripped a scream from her throat. Looking down, she saw her ankle was broken. Millie sobbed uncontrollably, yet still forced herself to tear off the tape and remove the last layer of protection. Her foot was swollen and deep purple. Tears streamed down her face, which was already covered in frostbite. She tried to touch her swollen, bruised foot, but the instant she did, a stabbing pain shot through her. At last, Millie broke down completely and cried in utter despair. Millie wedged her foot into the gap of a storage rack, slowly patted it with cardboard, then twisted with all her strength. The pain of resetting the bone knocked her unconscious instantly. When she woke up again, a small mouse had appeared beside her. She gently stroked the tiny creature, and somehow, it brought her a bit of comfort. She wrapped her injured foot tightly with tape once more, then reinforced it little by little with cardboard. Grimacing through the pain, she forced herself to stand, tested a few steps, and managed to walk. Barely. What she needed most now was energy. Inside the freezer, there were only frozen fries and chicken hard as rock. Just then, the little mouse seemed to guide her to a chocolate pie. The pie was still frozen solid, but it could at least give her some strength. She broke off a piece and offered it to the mouse. When it didn't eat, she held the pie to her mouth and breathed warm air onto it, trying to soften it. After all, they were fighting to survive together now. After eating, Millie snapped off a metal rod with effort. Holding the rod, she pried at the fan's protective cover again and again, then stabbed hard at it. Finally, she aimed straight at the fan and threw her entire body into it, but she was thrown backward, completely unable to stop the fan. If this continued, death was the only outcome. Meanwhile, Millie's father sensed something was wrong. His daughter had never come home this late before. He questioned her co-workers and manager, but everyone said she had clocked out long ago. He rushed to the police, but the dismissive officers barely took him seriously. Back in the freezer, Millie placed the mouse into her backpack, trying to keep it warm. That's when she felt something inside, a lighter. She quickly lit a piece of paper. The frost on the walls began to melt, and the temperature inside seemed to rise slightly. But before she could feel relief, thick smoke made her cough violently. The freezer had no ventilation at all. She had to extinguish the fire immediately. Yet the melted frost marks left on the scorched cardboard gave her an idea. By now, she had been trapped inside for 3 hours. Millie decided to build a crude insulated ice shelter to preserve warmth. Once it was finished, she placed the mouse inside first, then crawled in backward herself and sealed the entrance. Finally, she flicked the lighter again, hoping to stay warm. But before long, the lighter ran out of fuel. Only then did she realize the mouse, who had slipped out earlier, had frozen solid. She tried to climb out, but her arm was frozen firmly to the ice. Clenching her teeth, she tore herself free, ripping her skin loose by force. Staring at the mouse's lifeless body, she knew she wouldn't last much longer either. So she began throwing frozen chicken at the fan, trying to jam it with the meat. After only a few throws, she was completely exhausted. Then she spotted plastic wrap nearby and immediately wrapped herself tightly in it, continuing to hurl chicken at the fan. Finally, one piece of chicken got stuck in the blades. Carefully, she stuffed more chicken inside to keep the fan from restarting. But when she tried to disable the second fan, she no longer had any strength left at all. At that moment, Millie's boyfriend learned from her co-workers that although she had clocked out, she had stayed behind working in the freezer. Police also traced Millie's phone, confirming she had never left the shopping mall. Everyone rushed to the building, frantically searching for Millie trapped in the freezer. Inside, Millie noticed a loose screw. Using a hairpin, she slowly twisted it out. Behind the screw was a ventilation duct. She crawled toward it with everything she had left, but lost strength and fell hard to the ground. All she could do was bang on the duct with metal trays, throwing them down one by one. This was her final hope. At that very moment, her desperate father passed directly beneath the duct. He noticed the falling trays. Above the duct was the restaurant's freezer. When the freezer door was finally opened, Millie had already lost consciousness. Her devastated father collapsed in tears on the spot. But just then, Millie's hand suddenly twitched. Everyone in the hospital was stunned. Despite severe frostbite over her entire body, Millie was not in critical condition. Most people feel cold in a 17-degree air-conditioned room, yet Millie survived for 5 hours in a freezer at minus 18 degrees, wearing only a short-sleeved shirt. It turns out the human will to survive really can create miracles.
This is our 100th day stranded on the island. Jack finally couldn't take it anymore. He started having thoughts about me. I saw him drinking coconut water, so I couldn't help walking over. I hadn't eaten in a long time. I had to ask him for some food. Luckily, he was kind enough. He shared it without hesitation, then climbed a tree to pick more fruit for me. I felt grateful. He didn't seem as bad as I thought, but soon I noticed Jack kept secretly staring at me, so I cut my pants short, turned them into shorts to cover myself. Jack built a small hut with branches, but when he saw me wearing the shorts on purpose, he suddenly looked unhappy. He told me to do the work, while he just sat there watching. His stare made me uneasy. Then, he suddenly ran to the ocean, like he was trying to cool himself down. As time passed on the island, I started to rely on him, even slept close to him. When he held me, I didn't push him away. Every day after that, Jack kept watching the sky, hoping rescue would come for us. But many days passed. Not even a bird showed up. We slowly fell into despair. What we didn't know was, Jack's father and my mom searched for us every day, but they never found anything. One day Jack was bored drawing in the sand. He suddenly found something terrifying. I ran over and saw it was a dead body. I screamed and cried in fear, worried I might end up the same. Jack quickly hugged me to comfort me. He said he would always protect me. He promised to keep me safe. My heart completely melted. I calmed down little by little, and fully trusted Jack. One day while I was sleeping, a loud rumbling woke me up. I listened carefully and realized it was a plane. Jack jumped up and ran to the beach, searching for the signal gun, but he couldn't find it anywhere. He shouted at the sky, hoping the plane would see us, but it was too high above. The helicopter never noticed. We could only watch it fly farther and farther away.
Because of manslaughter, the girl was sentenced to exactly 1 minute. After putting on the punishment device, the enforcer squeezed eye drops into the criminal's eyes, causing her to faint on the spot. Entering a virtual prison, the girl slowly stood up, finding herself in a pitch-black room. There was no exit. The only companion was an electronic screen. She could only leave after reaching the 365th day, while only 1 minute would pass in the real world, to adapt the brain to the concept of time. The prison was equipped with daily food supplies. As long as she maintained real-world habits, her brain would not malfunction. To pass the time, besides meditating, she could also write. But this prison had no other inmates, not even guards to deliver food. Ordinary people could not endure the torment of loneliness. Every night at 8 p.m., the electronic screen would turn off, and only light up again the next morning. Yesterday's broken tablet was restored, and the daily food supply was refreshed. Her sentence entered the second day. She was bored to death, even forgetting her own existence. She could only grip the sharp steel plate with all her strength. The intense pain brought her a slight sense of relief. Days passed, and she finally found a way to kill time. As the developer of the project, her original intention was to use it to save her comatose brother, but the company altered her code for profit, turning years of hard work into a virtual prison. The program's side effects caused user deaths. Jessica became the prison's first inmate. She began checking the code inside the prison, hoping to find the cause of the side effects, with a goal in mind. Time flew by. She soon reached the final day. She counted her fingers, waiting for her sentence to end, waiting until the lights off time at night, but the prison door never appeared. Instead, the time on the screen suddenly reset. Her sentence inexplicably returned to day 1. What on earth was going on? She started cursing the company's shoddy project modifications. They even forgot to write the exit code for the prison. Jessica no longer wanted to stay a second longer. She went wild, destroying every inch of the prison, but it was all in vain. The program showed no response. She finally fell into despair, accepting the fate of being trapped here forever. But unexpectedly, in what was clearly a sealed dark room, a breeze suddenly came through the food storage cabinet. She walked over to investigate, and found a gap. With a little effort, she pried open the steel plate. Climbing out of the hole, she discovered it was an abandoned warehouse. She didn't know how to react, or where she even was. Countless questions swirled in her mind. She ran trying to escape, only to find another warehouse. She pulled down the light switch. A mountain of food filled the room. Without thinking further, she opened the warehouse, and found countless surveillance devices. The guards outside noticed someone escaping. She grabbed a jacket and fled. The guard's vehicle was parked by the roadside. She quickly started it and hit the gas, finally escaping the desolate mountains. Calming down, Jessica reflected on everything, and finally realized it was all a company conspiracy. Because she had always opposed the prison project, the company failed to attract investors. The executives used this method to push her out.
The man poured pig's blood into the ocean. The seawater instantly turned scarlet. The next second, my sister and I stepped into the steel cage. We were about to descend to the ocean floor, face to face with sharks. The cage slowly sank. Schools of small fish swam past our eyes. We were beyond excited. We raised our camera to capture the moment. When my sister's hand slipped, the camera flew from her grasp. The next instant, a shark appeared out of nowhere, swallowing the camera whole. The massive shark loomed before us. Adrenaline surged through my veins, but my sister began to panic. I immediately signaled our companions on the boat to pull us up. Just as they prepared to open the cage, the winch suddenly failed. The cage plummeted downward. We were utterly panicked. The cage plunged frantically downward, finally crashing heavily onto the ocean floor. After regaining our composure, we desperately signaled our companions for help, but there was no response. At that moment, we were 47 yards below the surface. Signals were impossible to transmit. This time, we were truly terrified. I forced myself to stay calm and reassured my sister. Our companions would come to rescue us. First, we had to establish contact. I tried to open the cage door, but soon realized it was jammed by the external frame. No amount of force could budge it. Just then, an idea struck me. I would squeeze through the gap. I unstrapped my oxygen tank and slowly squeezed outward, but my mask was too large and got stuck. I had to retreat back into the cage to remove the mask. My sister desperately tried to stop me, but we had no other choice. I took off the mask, breathlessly wriggled out of the cage, immediately put it back on outside, and strapped the oxygen tank back on. I swam up to the top of the cage, pushed the jammed frame with all my strength, and then swam upward with all my might. Soon I managed to contact the captain. He ordered us to stay put inside the cage. Sharks could attack at any moment. He would send sailors with spare steel cables to dive down and pull us to safety. Hearing this, I swam back to the cage immediately to relay the news to my sister, but we didn't know the real danger had only just begun.
At 10,000 meters above the ground, the woman suddenly passes out. Her body begins to slide downward. Anna wakes up in shock. She tries to grab the rope on the hot air balloon, but it's already too late. When she opens her eyes again, she realizes she's hanging upside down 10,000 meters in the air. The rope saved her life, but waking up only makes things worse. Then she remembers her partner in the basket and screams for help. James! But her partner is already unconscious, possibly dead. Of course, when it really matters, men are never reliable. In a life or death situation, she can only rely on herself. High above the clouds, Anna begins swinging her body, using momentum to push herself toward the basket. She makes it. She successfully gets back into the basket. But the danger isn't over. Her partner is still unconscious, and Anna has to save him fast. By now, the balloon has climbed to nearly 13,000 meters. The surface of the balloon is completely covered in thick ice, freezing the exhaust valve shut. The balloon keeps rising. If Anna doesn't open that valve, they won't survive. So she decides to climb up herself and open it manually. It's extremely dangerous. She has no safety gear. One single mistake, and she'll be torn to pieces. But Anna has no choice. After climbing for what feels like forever, she finally reaches the edge of the balloon. She looks up and realizes the top is still far away. Her hands are already frostbitten. She tries to grab a nearby rope, but it's just out of reach. By now, Anna is severely low on oxygen. She feels sleepy. She wants to close her eyes. But then she remembers her partner still lying unconscious below. And instantly, she snaps wide awake. She gathers every bit of strength she has, adjusts her body, and reaches out again. This time, she makes it. Using the rope, she pulls herself back up. She ties the rope around her waist to keep from falling. Then Anna starts climbing again. After endless struggle, she finally reaches the top of the balloon. She's completely exhausted, on the verge of collapse. But she doesn't give up. She slams the valve with her elbow again and again, but the ice is too thick. It won't break. So she slowly stands up and stomps down with all her strength. She succeeds. As air begins to escape, the hot air balloon finally starts descending. But then Anna notices something terrifying. The snowflakes falling in front of her are moving slower and slower until they completely stop in midair. That can only mean one thing. They're falling fast. The balloon is dropping far faster than the snow itself. Inside the Indian embassy, a woman suddenly rushed in, begging the staff for help.
प्लीज मुझे अंदर आने दीजिए मैं यहाँ बहुत बड़ी प्रॉब्लम में फंस गई हूँ कुछ लोग जबरदस्ती धोखे से मुझे बुनेर में फंसाए रखे हुए हैं कुछ लोग जबरदस्ती मुझे धोखे से बुनेर में फंसाए रखे हुए हैं वो लोग यहीं आसपास हैं आप प्लीज मुझे जल्दी से अंदर आने दीजिए
She looked frantic, her eyes filled with terror. Sensing something was wrong, the staff immediately hit the emergency alarm.
Gate number 6.
The woman pushed further inside, shouting desperately for help. The scene quickly turned chaotic, and at first, the staff suspected she might be a threat, trying to force her out. It wasn't until a diplomat stepped in, promising she would be protected, that she finally began to calm down. Then, under questioning, the woman began to share her story. Her name was Uma, a single mother. Her daughter had been born with thalassemia. In order to afford treatment, Uma had gone to Kuala Lumpur for work. That's where she met Tahir, a Pakistani man who seemed kind and gentle. He often helped her, always attentive. And over time, Uma grew dependent on him, eventually falling into a relationship with him. But one day, she received news from home that her daughter's condition had suddenly worsened, leaving her desperate. Tahir kept reassuring her and suggested taking her to Pakistan, claiming there was a possible treatment there and that she could also meet his family. He even proposed they make their relationship official. For the sake of her daughter and needing someone to rely on, a month later, Uma set out on the journey alone. But when she saw Tahir again, he was nothing like she remembered. His face covered in a thick beard, his expression distant.
ताहिर, ये क्या हाल बना रखा है तुमने अपना?
उज़मा थोड़ा
कर
गाड़ी में बैठो, सब बताता हूँ. चलो.
Without warmth, he shoved her straight into a car, heading toward a remote mountain area. The road was rough, and he handed her motion sickness candy, which she took without suspicion. In that moment, her fate quietly changed. After eating the candy, Uma slowly drifted into unconsciousness as the car drove deeper into the mountains of Pakistan. After an unknown amount of time, the car finally stopped at the base of a hill. Still dazed, Uma was dragged out. She had no idea where she was, only noticing armed people around her, their cold stares sending chills down her spine. When Tahir led her through a gate, what she saw left her stunned. Two little girls ran up, calling out "Dad" cheerfully. Uma froze in shock. Before she could react, Tahir's expression turned cold, and he snatched her bag away. Then two strange women rushed forward, throwing a local robe over her. Uma had no idea what was happening, only feeling the weight of everyone's eyes locked onto her. She screamed Tahir's name, demanding answers, but he said nothing, just stared at her coldly. She was shoved into a room. Once inside, several women began changing her clothes. Uma was completely lost. Everything had happened too fast. She had come to meet family, yet ended up here. As the door shut behind her, locked from the outside, the air felt suffocating. She pounded on the door, calling out her boyfriend's name, but no one answered. As Uma slowly calmed down, replaying everything in her mind, she realized she had been deceived. This wasn't a family visit. It was a carefully planned trap. When Tahir appeared again, she rushed at him, demanding answers. This time, he dropped all pretense.
तुम शादीशुदा हो, पहले से बच्चे तुम्हारे, मैं प्यार करती थी तुमसे, तुमने धोखा दिया है मुझे मक्का.
Revealing his true, cruel nature, naive Uma tried to leave.
मुझे घर जाना है, मुझे.
But he blocked her path. He brought out rope, tied her up tightly, and slammed her against the wall.
अब यही रहना है तुम्हें, समझे?
Then he began tearing at her clothes. That night, Uma endured unimaginable suffering. People came and went from the room, her eyes filled with fear, and even more, with overwhelming despair. By the next morning at breakfast, she was still trapped in fear, unable to recover. The women beside her gently urged her to eat something. When Uma looked up, she saw that their faces and bodies were also covered in scars. Clearly, they too had been tricked into coming here. Over time, they had been forced to accept this life. Soon after, Uma was blindfolded and taken into the yard. It was crowded with people, their eyes scanning her like merchandise at a market. A bearded man stepped forward, inspecting her from head to toe as if she were an object, even examining her feet.
أرولا خانة شايدة.
رازق سيه نال ره.
Listening to their conversation, Uma finally realized she was being treated as something to be sold. Fortunately, they seemed to think she was too old and didn't choose her. But because of that, the unhinged Tahir made another decision. He would keep her in the village to serve men and officially marry her.
मैं तुमसे निकाह नहीं कर सकती हूँ यार.
What awaited her next was more endless suffering. The following morning, Uma sat by the window in despair. Imprisoned, abused, stripped of dignity, she felt that death might be her only escape. Just then, a single thought hit her daughter back home. That little girl was still waiting for her to return. That memory became the only reason she had left to stay alive. At that moment, the door behind her slowly creaked open in the wind. Uma froze in shock, realizing it hadn't been locked at all. Even though fear still gripped her, her instinct to survive pushed her forward. Since it was still early, most people in the house were asleep. Step by step, she carefully made her way outside. To her surprise, the courtyard was completely empty. For a second, it felt like a real chance to escape. She immediately rushed toward the gate.
बाहर से बंद है.
But right then, a girl suddenly appeared and coldly told her it was useless.
देखो, बाहर जाके कोई फायदा नहीं है. बाहर भी वैसे ही मरते जैसे इस घर में. कोई भी देखेगा उठा के ही ले जाएगा।
Those words hit her like ice water, instantly crushing her fragile hope. But in that same moment, Uma noticed something. The girl was holding a phone. That sight felt like her last lifeline. She quickly begged to use it to make a call. The two of them quietly climbed onto the roof, struggling to find a signal, until finally they caught a faint connection. The call went through, and on the other end was her friend in Kuala Lumpur. Uma poured out everything that had happened to her. Her friend stayed unusually calm and told her the truth. She was in a remote area of Pakistan. Even if she called the police, no one would reach her in time. Again and again, her friend reminded her to stay alive no matter what. The only real chance was to find a way to reach the Indian embassy in Pakistan. Only there would she have any hope of survival. Those words snapped Uma back to reality. She made up her mind to endure whatever came next and wait for the right moment to escape. Every one of these kids wears a metal collar on their head. They can never take it off. Not while studying, writing, or even eating. Because they're not normal children. They're zombies. The moment they smell human flesh, they mutate. In the future, humans capture and study a second generation of zombies. Unlike regular ones, these children can talk, think independently, and are even smarter than normal kids. Take Melanie, the main character, for example. Every morning, she calmly rolls herself into her wheelchair, carefully adjusts the straps, and waits for the soldiers to arrive. When they come in, she politely greets them. She obediently lets them restrain her, even reminding them to double-check the locks. But the soldiers never respond. They never talk to her. They never touch her directly. In this entire base, no one treats them like human beings. Except one person, their gentle teacher, Miss Justineau. Every day, she teaches the zombie children the periodic table and other human knowledge. Sometimes she secretly chats with them and tells them stories. Melanie especially adores her. But the kids don't know why they're learning human things. They only know that every night, a doctor comes to test them. Melanie always gets every answer right. After one test, the doctor asks her to choose a number. She randomly picks one.
13.
Thank you.
Satisfied, the doctor leaves. The next day, Melanie goes to class as usual, but quickly notices something is wrong. Student number 13 is missing. She asks the teacher where number 13 went. For the first time, Miss Justineau hesitates and avoids the question. Melanie instantly understands. The doctor took him away. That night, the doctor returns.
Would you like to give me another number? Anything from...
4.
The doctor freezes, because number 4 is Melanie's own room. He realizes she's figured out the pattern. Sure enough, the next day, it's a commander who comes for Melanie. She isn't taken to class. Instead, she's wheeled outside. For the first time in her life, Melanie sees the outside world. Beyond the fence, countless zombies crowd together. Melanie is taken into the lab. Her incredible learning and observation skills prove she's the most evolved of them all. If they use her to develop a zombie cure, it will definitely work. The researchers inject her with sedatives and lift her onto the operating table. Just as the surgery is about to begin, the alarm suddenly blares. The doctor doesn't panic. She tells her assistant to close the windows and continue, but she doesn't realize the zombies have already broken through the defenses. This might be the hardest job interview in the world. 8 candidates walked into the exam room, and the moment they got their test papers, they froze. Because the test was krati, a completely blank sheet of paper. Everyone was confused, but nobody dared to speak. Because before the exam started, the examiner announced 3 strict rules. Rule number 1, you are not allowed to talk to the examiner or the security guards. Rule number 2, you are not allowed to leave this room. Rule number 3, you are not allowed to stain or damage the test paper. Break even one rule and you're eliminated instantly, and you lose your chance at a job that pays $10 million a year. After reading the rules, the examiner started an 80-minute countdown and walked out of the room. The candidates stared at the blank paper, completely lost. No one even knew what the question was. Time kept ticking. One woman couldn't take it anymore. She thought, maybe the blank paper means we're supposed to write a professional report. So she picked up her pen and started writing. But the moment she wrote her name, the guard walked straight over, grabbed her, and threw her out of the room because she violated rule number 3. You can't stain the paper. After watching her get eliminated, everyone else dropped their pens immediately. But then, one man suddenly realized something. The examiner only mentioned 3 rules, which means, as long as you don't break those rules, everything else is allowed. So he casually stood up and started shadowboxing. The guard didn't react at all, so he got even bolder. He started greeting the other candidates like it was nothing, because the rule only said, you can't talk to the examiner or the guards. It never said, you can't talk to each other. Once the others realized it was allowed, they all started talking too, and they began brainstorming. Why is the test paper blank? Then Lisa stood up. She said, "What if the paper is made with some kind of chemical? Maybe the question only appears under certain light." Everyone thought she might be right, so they held the paper close to the ceiling lights. But nothing happened. Then Mike said, "Maybe it needs special light, like UV or infrared." But there wasn't any of that in the room. At the same time, a blonde woman noticed something on the wall: emergency lights. To test the theory, they smashed one of the lights, and seconds later, a blue emergency light turned on. They thought, "This is it, now we'll see the question." But after testing, the paper was still completely blank. Kevin thought they picked the wrong color. Maybe there were other lights in the room. Then Boa, who was super observant, pointed something out. There was another light tube on the wall that hadn't turned on yet. That gave them hope, so they smashed that emergency light too. And the room lit up with a warm yellow glow. But sadly, the paper still didn't change. And then they noticed Paul. Since the moment they entered the room, Paul hadn't stood up even once. So they asked him why. Paul looked at them and said something strange. What they didn't realize was that Paul had just revealed the secret of the blank paper. The man was about to be sent to prison, yet he looked unusually calm. Perfect 8-pack abs and sharp V-lines. What stood before them was a flawless body. His fierce gaze was enough to send chills down anyone's spine. But the guards weren't afraid at all. They blasted him with high-pressure water without hesitation, then casually sprinkled sulfur powder all over him. At this moment, Jason had no choice but to swallow his anger. He didn't dare resist in any way. Soon, he was thrown into a cell. The moment he placed his prison uniform on the bed, a cellmate greeted him with a friendly, flying kiss. Facing the vicious looks around him, Jason said nothing. Just as the guards outside were about to leave, the noise inside the cell caught their attention. They assumed Jason was about to get beaten badly and walked over, ready to enjoy the show. But when they reached the cell door, they were stunned. Every inmate inside was sprawled on the floor. Jason simply said one thing: they slipped. The guards were completely shocked. The next morning, when Jason went to the cafeteria for breakfast, a bald man suddenly sat across from him and immediately tried to provoke him. At that moment, the bald man's boss walked over as well. Jason finally lost his patience and was about to teach the boss a lesson. Luckily, the guards arrived in time and stopped the situation from escalating. Afterward, the guards escorted Jason to meet the warden, warning him along the way. The man he injured was the prison's race car driver, and the warden hated anyone who caused trouble with racers. Once Jason entered the office, the warden began explaining the prison rules, constantly trying to provoke him with words. But Jason remained completely composed. With no other choice, the warden revealed her true intention. She wanted Jason to replace the deceased racer Frank and continue a brutal game called Death Race. As part of the deal, if Jason won 5 consecutive races, he would be released from prison and regain his freedom. Hearing such an offer, Jason agreed without hesitation. The warden then took him to a garage and handed him over to Frank's former coach. From that moment on, Jason stepped onto a path of no return, and the deadly game known as Death Race was about to officially begin. One day, while Jason was outside relaxing, he accidentally noticed something. The bracelets worn by prison staff were identical to the one worn by his wife's killer. Jason immediately realized this was a setup targeting him. But if he wanted to escape this prison, he had no choice but to endure it for now. Soon, the day of the final race arrived. Jason still wore the painful mask, taking the place of the dead racer Frank. Jason entered the track, and the other drivers climbed into their cars. Then a bus drove in from inside the prison. Stepping out were stunningly beautiful women. They weren't there to watch the race. They were the navigators for the drivers. One woman dressed in black was Jason's navigator this time, Case. After getting into the car, the two exchanged friendly greetings.
I'm Case.
Frank.
Funny, you don't sound like Frank.
Noticing the confusion in Case's eyes, Jason offered no explanation. The moment the window closed, he decisively removed the fake mask, ready to race openly and without restraint. With a single order from the warden, this deadly game officially began.